my pleasure to invite the Premier here to join me. We'll be opening the floor to questions from the media.
This money, this investment is into community safety, but there was a mention of 69% of the firearms being smuggled in. The federal government is only putting in $50 million over 5 years to CBSA. Do we need to have a bigger investment in the border than we currently have right now, if that's the main source of the guns causing the problems?
Well, I think we should. I think it's a good start, but we need to invest in our border security. They're absolute champs down there. They're the first line of defense, and we support them 1,000%. And I'll be speaking to the Prime Minister about that. And I know there's been a lot of talk about banning guns, handguns. Criminals and gangbangers don't go up to register their guns, so I disagree with that. I believe we should be putting the money into our great men and women standing behind me and give them the resources that they need to go after these punks that have the guns that are, threatening the law-abiding people of Peel, and we're going to get them. We will catch them. We're going to throw them away. What the federal government should be doing is start focusing on bail reform. The judges and the JPs have to toughen up. What's frustrating to not only ourselves, but the police out there, that they catch a gangbanger and all of a sudden the next day he's out on the street, or the next 2 days. We got to throw the key away with these guys and send a message that we aren't going to tolerate them running around shooting up the streets.
To follow up on a different matter, Premier, when I asked you in December in Ottawa about concerns on the LRT, you said you were fine with it. The system still doesn't work. Doors don't open. We now find out that there's flat spots on wheels, and this is the same train system that is being purchased for both the Finch Line and the Huron-Ontario. So do you still have faith in Ottawa's system, especially as it comes down here, and if Mayor Crombie wants to jump in on flat wheels as well?
Well, we're going to have a different crew out there putting together, learn by the mistakes, and I've been in close contact with the Mayor of Ottawa. Matter of fact, I'll be there in a few hours. I'll be heading over to Ottawa, and I think I have confidence in the Mayor up there. As a matter of fact, I have 100% confidence he's going to fix the problem. We put a tremendous amount of money towards the Ottawa Transit, and we support them. They're going to get through it. They're going to figure out the bumps in the road, excuse the pun, but they'll get it taken care of. I'm pretty confident.
Now, let me just say that I'm very grateful for the over $2 billion in capital investment in our Huron-Ontario LRT, and we look forward to it breaking ground later this spring, and I'm sure by then whatever kinks are in the system will have been worked out. So thank you.
Okay, good morning, Premier. Earlier this week, the Toronto Star revealed that your government had appointed a Toronto police officer to the board of the Ontario Human Rights Commission. The question swirling around that is the Human Rights Commission is investigating Toronto police for systemic racism. So how is it appropriate to have a Toronto police officer on the board of that body when that is happening? Isn't that a conflict of interest?
Well, I'll let the Attorney General answer that, but again, I just want to reinforce, I support our police. I support the appointment that the Attorney General did. And if anyone on any board, as each and every one of you know, I've sat on boards, if there's a conflict, they remove themselves for that one conflict. But two phenomenal candidates, and the police officer that's serving, top-notch. Can't ask for a better police officer than what the Attorney General appointed. I'll let the Attorney General.
Thank you, Premier. And if you look at his record, he is a phenomenal appointment. We went through all the appropriate process to do the conflict checks, to do the background, to do all that sort of thing. So I have full confidence that the board will function as it always has. And as the Premier mentioned, if there's an issue that comes up, of course they'll deal with any conflict like they would anybody else.
On another matter, as a follow-up, this week it also came out that there's a proposal to let developers hire a new class of architect and engineer called a certified professional as a building inspector. So how is it How do you see that working? Because there's a lot of criticism that that is ripe for conflict of interest too. If a developer can pay to have basically his or her own building inspector.
Well, the reason we're doing that, there's such a backlog in all the cities on inspectors. An inspector is going to be held accountable. It's like getting an engineer stamp on a diagram. They're going to be held accountable. We believe and we trust that these are professionals. And at any given time, no matter what city they're building in, the inspectors can come in and inspect it. But we have to get development moving in the GTA and along with Toronto. The problem we're facing right now is supply and demand. There's not enough supply and there's an over demand. The prices have gone up. We need to, make sure that we give the opportunity for the developers to get permits and start building homes, affordable homes. And I've always said I'm big into affordable housing, but you know what I'm even bigger in? Affordable ownership. I encourage both the mayors there to look at affordable ownership, because as you know, if someone owns a house, they're going to take care of it a lot better than if it's just handed over to them. So we're going to be working with the region and right across Ontario for affordable ownership.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Mr. Premier. We've been writing about the story of Devin Freeman. He was a 16-year-old Indigenous youth who committed suicide while he was in the child welfare system. His body wasn't found for 7 months, and your government is facing calls to do mandatory inquests for any children who die in care. I wonder if you support that and why.
We're a collaborative team, and so we talk about a lot of things all the time. And no, I don't think a decision has been made on that, and certainly we're looking at that request. We'll have to bring in also some of the other ministers who will have input in terms of their portfolios. And right now we are doing a consultation. Parliamentary Assistant Jeremy Roberts is out leading a consultation in terms of some of the systems that are interacting for our children to make sure that we're doing things the best way possible. So we'll have to get back to you in terms of
why can't you commit to making this mandatory though? Isn't this a pressing public issue?
It's an absolute tragedy, and we have a process where we talk among our colleagues. I don't walk up to a mic and just make decisions.
What is a provincial estimate of what it's going to cost us? And what are the provincial plans to handle the burden on a system that's way overburdened already?
So unfortunately, because it just was released yesterday, we're in a period where I can't comment on the file. We're reviewing the decision, and we can talk about the system writ large and some of the challenges we have there. But I can't talk about this one in particular until some time passes.
And so how did this happen? Who's to blame? We heard from analysts yesterday saying there's enough blame to go around. Is it the federal government? The wording of the legislation wasn't good enough? Or did the province jump the ball and order the Crown attorneys to go under this new legislation for files that were already in the system?
That would make me talk about the case that was just released yesterday, and unfortunately I'm constrained and I can't.
ETFO just minutes ago released another announcement that they're going to hold another day of one-day rotating strikes next week. They're happening every day. How long are you going to let this continue?
Well, we're working hard to get the deal, and Minister Lecce is doing a great job. And you know something, a message to the teachers, I support you. We have some great, hardworking men and women that show up every day. I totally disagree with the head of the union. You know, we're treating them fairly. We aren't budging on that 1%. All the OPS, because of the financial disaster the previous government left us in, they've agreed. QP signed a deal along with another union. Why should there be two rules? One for the head of the teachers union and another rule for everyone else. We all have to tighten up our belt. And I always look at things, are we treating the frontline teachers, which I support all frontline people working, are we treating them fairly? And the answer is yes. You know, the average wage is 98,000. That's the average, second highest in the entire country. 80% of the entire budget goes to their compensation, goes to their pensions that we're all pitching in, paying for, along with the benefits. And do you know how many teachers I've talked to that just want this to be over? They're happy. They want to get back in the classroom. I hear that over and over. And the other thing I hear, Cynthia, and I've been up to, in the last 3-4 days, I was down in Windsor, Essex, all through Toronto, up in Huntsville and Parry Sound. There isn't a place I'm going. Even this morning, I stopped over at a gas station. People coming in, do not budge with those teachers. And I'm being frank, I'm hearing strangers everywhere, do not budge. Everyone loves our teachers. They're being treated fairly. They have to make sure they put the priority of the kids and stay in the classroom. That's all we're asking. But we're going to get a deal done. We're going to get a deal, and we're going to keep the pressure on, let's say. But we aren't budging for the 1%. And hopefully they're going to come to their senses, the union, not the teachers, the union.
So I think what's frustrating for many is that there haven't been talks in weeks. No talks are scheduled. Both sides tell me, well, it's the other person's fault, or the other side's fault that there haven't been talks. Why don't you just order them to sit down at the table, lock the door, and make them hash it out?
We're there. We're at the table. And
But no talks are happening,
we
Premier.
gave some concessions. We gave concessions on the online learning, a few other areas that we gave concessions. You know, we'll get it done. But there's only so long my patience can last with the head of the unions. So stay tuned.
What does that mean?
Cynthia, I'm trying to be fair with these people. And that's what I look at every negotiation. We have struck so many great deals throughout the province, and it's the same union that has fought with every government, every premier for 30 years. And people see it, and they're, be frank, they're getting fed up. Not with the teachers, but the head of the unions. And I'll be very frank, a lot of teachers are fed up with the unions. When I talk to them, they said, oh, we're terrified of our unions. You got to be kidding me. You're terrified? I hear it over and over and over again that the teachers want to put this behind us. They're happy. Go in the classroom and teach our kids. That's a priority.
Next question. Hi, Premier Ford, Chief Nish. There's a lot of critics saying that pouring more money into policing instead of addressing the underlying social causes of increased gun and gang violence will not actually help the problem. Do you plan on addressing such social issues or providing funding for them?
So I think just to clarify, you know, for example, today we're talking about gun and gang violence. And the gun violence, we've always said, and many chiefs will say, is a symptom of the root causes that lead to it. You know, we know that there are other criminal activities, social disorder, whatever it might be. There is an emergent pressure for my officers in order to respond to the day-to-day needs. There are shootings that are happening, you know, regularly that our frontline people need to respond to. That environment needs to end. So there will always be a need and a demand for frontline investigative enforcement activities. You know, today's funding will go towards that. But as you've heard the Solicitor General speak to, there's a significant amount of investment in our public safety space on mitigating risk. And policing has evolved. So, you know, there have been critics. However, I bet you can't find a chief now this day that doesn't believe that there has to be concurrent activities to mitigate risk. And as you've heard, we are continuing to do multiple activities in the sphere of prevention, social development. You know, there are many communities that need to be invested in from a sense of building youth, supporting parents. There's a youth exiting care, mental health, addictions, let alone the human trafficking. And they all have to happen concurrently. And I think you know, if you stepped into our organization, you would see that we have many officers, and some of this funding is going to help in those other streams to build resiliency in communities. So, you know, the criticism probably is rooted in an age-old historic approach to just enforcement only. We know that that is a priority. We'd have to deal with the day-to-day needs, stop the shootings. However, we need to find a way upstream to mitigate that risk. And I'm confident that, you know, we're doing that here, many organizations are, and this funding will go to assist us in that regard.
Thanks.
So the chief articulated it very well, but I want to reinforce, in Ontario today, 40% of the calls that our police are receiving are directly related to mental health. Our government has made a commitment to deal with some of the upstream issues, but in the meantime, we have gangs who are operating across Ontario who don't have any regard for innocent lives and innocent people. When we deal with individuals who are in parks, who are in community centers, who don't feel safe, there is a responsibility for all of us, which frankly, I think is why you see the region, the mayors, the police, and our province working together on this very critical issue.
I'm wondering if I can ask Mayor Brown a quick question. Mayor Brown, a little while ago, you said that gang violence was coming from Toronto and sort of leaking into Peel region. Do you still stand by that statement?
I think the gang activity is a GTA-wide problem. I think it started in Toronto but has now spread throughout the GTA. And what I've certainly been briefed on is that the gangs have become more sophisticated, where they may have originated in Toronto, they now have membership that is throughout the GTA, and it's why this funding was so important. One of our concerns originally was that gun and gang funding was directed to Toronto. I think this is impressive. The government's recognized this is a GTA-wide problem. We need funding to address it. The police need to have the resources, and this is an important step towards that.
We have time for 2 more.
Premier, I just wanted to ask you a quick question following up on Cynthia's last question there. You alluded to your patience with the teachers. I'm wondering if that means you're actively considering back-to-work legislation at this point.
Not at this point, but we want to get a deal. We're working hard. Minister Lecce is doing an absolute incredible job. He's an incredible communicator, as I've said over and over again. He's talking to parent groups across the province, not just in Toronto, but we need to get the kids in the classroom where they belong, a safe environment. They have to respect. I have a great deal of respect for the frontline, hardworking men and women teaching our students. But the unions have to respect the taxpayer. They have to respect the students and keep them in the class. But we're going to get a deal. We will get a deal.
On another topic, almost a year ago to the day, you warned that there was a very real risk of a carbon tax recession. That obviously hasn't come to bear at this point. The carbon backstop has been in place since the spring. Ontario's economy, to your own attestation, is booming. I'm wondering if you regret making that comment.
Oh, not at all. When people go out and they're paying more for gas, more for food, more for everything, the carbon tax is an absolute terrible tax. It's a tax grab, and the reason the economy is booming is because of our government. We created the environment for 296,000 new jobs. Check back in the records. I can't remember the last time a government, we did, I think it was back in the mid-1980s, no government in a year has created close to 300,000 jobs, lowered taxes, put more money back into people's pockets, more money into businesses to thrive and prosper and grow. Our economy's on fire. 76% of all new jobs in this country was created here in Ontario. That's phenomenal, and it all has to do with making sure that we cut red tape, regulations, lower taxes. When you put money back into people's pocket, they're going to go out and they're going to spend it on places that they might otherwise not be able to. You put it into companies' pockets, they're going to reinvest it into equipment, into technology, into people. The economy is thriving. Our biggest problem is we're short about 250,000 people to fill the jobs, skilled and unskilled. So we have to make sure that we get the people that are looking for jobs connected with employers that need them.
Hi, Premier. We got some data from the health ministry that shows that the hallway medicine problem, the hallway healthcare overcrowding in hospitals isn't just something that happens occasionally during flu season, but it's going on every single day in dozens of hospitals all across the province. Your government's been in power for a year and a half now. Why haven't you made more progress on your promise to end hallway healthcare?
I think we've made tremendous progress, and I appreciate your comments. We've increased healthcare by $1.9 billion, more than any government in the history of Ontario. We're working on a daily basis, making sure we're working with hospitals, coming up with systems and funding to end hallway healthcare. One part of hallway healthcare is mental health. We're putting $3.8 billion, 1.9 from the feds, 1.9 from us, to end hallway healthcare. And we're working hard, and we're going to continue looking at lean systems. I talked to the folks over at McKenzie, and they told me that they're chipping away. They're down to about half an hour wait times, and obviously it fluctuates, but they said they're about a half an hour. We're going to implement that right across the province. We're doing everything we can to fix the mess, the absolute mess the previous Liberal government gave us. And if you look at health, it's a million different moving parts, over $63 billion budget. And the difference between us and the previous government, we're actually working with the frontline doctors, frontline nurses, and they're coming up with solutions to support us, and we appreciate all their support.
Okay, and if I can follow up, Premier, the evidence is showing that actually there hasn't been much progress made at all. The overcrowding is really serious in a lot of places, including right here in Peel Region. Brampton Mayor Brown and Council declared a healthcare emergency.
Yep.
I'd like to hear from you a response to their call for saying that Brampton's healthcare system is in dire need of funding and support from the provincial government, and if Mayor Brown can comment as well about what kind of response you've actually truly been getting from the provincial government.
Well, the true response, as you were saying, is we've invested over $70 million in infrastructure at William Osler. Now keep in mind, we've been in power 18 months. This just didn't happen overnight. This happened over 15 years of mismanagement from the previous Liberal government. We're putting the resources in. We're doing everything we can to clean up hallway health care, and we are putting a dent in it. We're putting in, I believe, it's close to $27 billion over the next 10 years in building new hospitals and making sure that we have the support for the hospitals and regions, be it Peel. And yes, we will support a hospital in Brampton. But again, you're looking at regions, 444 different regions, all wanting money for healthcare, and we're doing our very best to support everyone right across Ontario. And one of our top priorities, obviously, is here in Peel. I have 2 pages I could read off of all the funding that we've supported Peel and mental health and other areas, but I'd be here for another 10 minutes reading it off here. Sorry.
Just briefly, thanks to the Premier for the opportunity to discuss this before. We had a meeting prior to this announcement. The fact that they're here, they're listening, they're talking about it is a good signal. As the Premier said, they're going to support a Brampton hospital. I take those very encouraging words, and I would note, I recognize the fact that the crisis we're in, it wasn't created in a year, that this has been a crisis that has emerged over the last 15 to 20 years, and the fact that we're at the table talking to the Premier directly about it, when only 2 days ago, we had our physicians and patients come forward with a plea for help, the fact that we're at the table so quickly is encouraging.